There we go. Okay, go for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the goal of this issue is to have the Hermeto Cache 2 part recognize newer Rust versions. So for pulling in dependencies, prefetching dependencies. We also have, like on our team, the issue that we need a newer Rust compiler for compiling anyway. So we created that hermetic build of the Rust compiler itself so that we have a Rust compiler image. We had a discussion about that to migrate that to Konflux, which also happened now. So there is a Konflux GitHub organization where the Rust builder image is now hosted, which is based on what we did in our team. And we also have a successful Konflux build of that image, and it's pushed to KIO. It's not tagged yet, but I think that's probably the next step. Now, the idea is to extract the Rust toolchain from that and put that into the Hermeto image for prefetching those dependency. And right now it feels a little bit like we made some progress, but now what is the next step, and who can help and how can we support?
First off, do we have anybody on the call from the Hermeto project? I think we maybe do not today. In which case, we'll have to do some guesswork and point you to them for more afterwards. I would say that, like, for another complex image, maybe the answer will be different for Hermeto. That if we have like a centralized image that we want to use as the step for other tasks, then a pattern I think I've seen is that we can build an image like the Rust builder image and then use it as an intermediary build layer in the build of the Hermeto step image, and then just copy from that image into the other image. This gives us good SBOM exposure in the Hermeto image because we're aware of all the images that we're pulling it in. So that's what I'd recommend in general. Maybe the answer for Hermeto specifically will be different, but I think the thing to do is to follow up with people from that project. I think, I don't know, anybody else on the call, who would you recommend for Jens to follow up with from Hermeto?
I think you can ping us in forum Konflux build on Slack. Or in the upstream Slack, maybe, since it's the community call.
Yeah. Louis, go ahead.
Yes, is there a release process that has been added to this image, or is the image just being built into a Way repo and stays there?
So right now there is no release. This is also a question like, do we need a release? Is it fine just to use the digest of that image? So the idea is to always have a latest one because newer Rust compilers are guaranteed to compile the old Rust code. So it's not necessary to keep all the different versions alive. Yeah, this is all points for discussion. That's what I was hoping we make some progress today.
Good. The reason I ask is because we also want to use that image as one of the parent images when you're building a Rust application, right?
No, I wouldn't say so, because once you use the compiler, the resulting binary can run without the compiler image.
I mean, let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. Not as a direct parent of the final stage, but one of the stages in the Docker file, we use that image to compile the application.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and the way Konflux works is we capture like all those images, and those are all considered base images. Mm-hmm. There's a reason for that, but I wonder if we need to have some validation. Like, I know that you've set up the build process for building that image correctly, but there's nothing that validates that confirms that. So a release process, even if it goes to just another Quay.io repo that has like restricted control, it's a better way of saying, I built this image, it has passed all the integration tests that I have, it has passed all the conformant policies that we have, and then you put into the release pipeline will copy that image over to this other more restricted repo. Just something that might be easier to when you are actually building your application with this Rust compiler. You don't get like a violation in conformance saying, hey, you're using a untrusted, unknown parent image.
Okay, since I'm new to that, who would be the right person to reach out to? Would that be maybe you?
I can definitely point you in the right direction. We probably want to have a managed release, right, Ralph, for this.
Definitely. I put in sidebar, I think the location should probably be quay.io/confluxci/rust builder. The Konflux CI Quay org is I think the right place to land it. And for those pipelines, yeah, I can help. I think Louis can help. We manage the configuration for the release to that destination inside Red Hat in the release engineering repository. So that's the place we'll go to do the work.
It's it's a similar process to what you used to with when you have the TPA images that get released to the Red.io. It just has a different target.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not doing that. That is a colleague of mine.
Talk to him.
Okay.
Talk to him, or you can come learn from us, and then you'll know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we manage. I mean, this makes sense for a public call, but Konflux release service has this release plan and a release plan admission pair of resources. What we'll need to do is put a merge request into the release engineering repo for Red Hat's configuration that defines a release plan admission that says your namespace is permitted to release to quay.io/confluxci/rust builder. And upon merge of that, we'll need authorization from others to do it. Then at that point, anytime you set up a release in your namespace, the image will be copied there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Jens, I hope you got what you needed. Sound good? Okay. We'll follow up async on that. Adam, I think you're up next on ADR on the Maven build pipeline. Sorry, is Adam here? I thought he was. I thought I saw him join. Oh, there you are, Adam. You're on mute if you don't know.
Mic check. Does this work now?
Can
There
hear.
we go. Excellent. Yeah, so I think the Rust conversation is a good segue to my topic, which is on enabling Maven and building artifacts with Java. And so I guess it makes sense for me to share the ADR doc. Let me zoom in a bit. So the main thrust of this is to adding an additional pipeline so that you can build Maven artifacts for Java using Maven. Maven is the most widely used build tool in the Java ecosystem. It's not the only one, but it's if you're doing like an 80-20 principle, I think the 80% is in Maven. So the goal here is to really provide a build pipeline where developers don't need to create a container file or anything to build the way that they expect. And so one of the challenges kind of with Maven, and this might be the sort of general community expectation, is that when they're building, they're going to have a Maven repository that they plan on publishing to. Challenge with Konflux is that we use OCI for everything. And we use OCI to kind of not only just manage the data of like what we have built, but also use that as inputs to other various parts of the pipeline. So I struggled with this a bit, and the V0 of this pipeline is that it is able to publish the Maven content to a container registry through an OCI artifact. And it doesn't matter what container registry, it's just using OCI. It is literally just bundling the content that was built through the Maven deploy command, or goal, I should say, which is kind of a standard goal That's part of the Maven build lifecycle. And then optionally, if there is an actual real Maven repository that the project is configured with, and the build pipeline is configured with, it can optionally push it to that location too. So the problem is we do effectively 2 pushes and the content is built twice. And it even gets slightly worse if you're doing what are called snapshot builds, because snapshot is kind of like a special thing in the Maven ecosystem, where it's the equivalent of like a floating tag. Maven otherwise assumes that all versions are immutable, or tries to. And as a result, if you look at the actual version that's, if you look at the versions that are actually generated, you might have version skew between what was published in the Maven repository and what is in your container registry, but the actual contents are the same, the checksums are the same. It's a bit of a hack. I'd love to have a better idea, honestly, in terms of how we can handle and effectively not have to publish content twice and store content twice. But this is kind of like the good sort of first crack, I'd say.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so I might have missed this, but what's the reason that the build pipeline is the one that deploys to the real Maven registry? This feels like a release sort of action.
So you can think of it more like you are publishing to a staging, or almost like the Red Hat user workloads, or in Play. That's kind of like the equivalent. There are, it's something that I know we kind of do or speaking with other, I've spoken with a lot of Red Hat teams who build Java, and I think other companies do this as well, where they will have the kind of like dev Maven repository, and then they can copy from that sort of like dev to either staging or production Maven repository. I'm honestly not familiar with if there's other like Maven, the vendors and other projects that do provide Maven repositories, if they do have similar kind of features where you can have content declared as being like your dev version beyond the sort of like snapshot repository concept versus the stuff that you had released. You don't see this as much with like Maven Central. Like developers who are building content for Maven Central, they're just literally, the build is what actually pushes the content.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you.
So this reminds me of work that has been ongoing to make pulp work for the upload of RPMs from the RPM build pipeline. In that world, I think the pipeline still just pushes to Quay directly, and we have an OCI artifact for the RPM, and then the story's over. We move on to release, and normal things happen after that. But there's been a work in progress effort to change the task that does the upload at the end of that pipeline to, instead of pushing to Quay, to push to Pulp, to a Pulp repository, with special support in Pulp to use the OCI registry as its backend. And this solves that like drift problem, the version drift problem, because there's only one push done from the pipeline and the same artifact is stored in both places. But it relies on support in Pulp that I don't know if they have done in a way that can be generalized to the other artifact types, like Maven, for instance.
Yeah, and this is something I also thought about too, and I kind of alluded to maybe in prior conversations on these community calls, is that to me that like feature of Pulp is special to Pulp, and there are lots of different vendors, projects that support storage of Maven, and so one of the kind of guiding principles that I took in this ADR is that the Maven repository that things can get published to, and it's optional, is it's not special. That it's just using general Maven APIs, and in that universe, you can't kind of get an OCI artifact through some kind of side channel.
Right. Makes sense.
At least with Maven 3. There's Maven 4 is currently beta. They have various release candidates. I think it's been beta for almost 2 years at this point. But even then, the .0, there's not going to no container thing whatsoever in that universe yet. So it looks like we got a nice queue. Louis, and then
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So I think with the Kalunga project and building Python wheels in Konflux, we're kind of like in the same spot where we're generating an OCI artifact, and then the downside of that is that you can't pip install from an OCI artifact, which is a similar problem I think that you're trying to get to here. It's like when you build this Maven jars, you can't install them from an OCI artifact. That's why you want to put them in a Maven repo so you can actually do something with them. I think it makes sense to have a test that does that, whether that's done in the build pipeline or maybe part of the integration pipeline somehow as a way for testing. I think it's probably not important in this ADR. I think just having the ability to do that is important. I was going to ask you what kind of APIs are in place, but it sounds like there's a standard Maven API that you can use, so you don't have to tie this to a particular implementation of like a Maven registry, right? That's my understanding.
Yeah, and I mean, I think really the Maven API is really a file system layout, a directory structure, and so it really just happens as directory structures. And this is actually kind of cool, and the pipeline actually takes advantage of this. The repo can be like just a file tree, or it could be, a directory tree that is served from an Apache web server, and there's just some requirements around the metadata that, or there's some like XML data that is managed on the directory tree for that.
Okay, so you probably so it's very similar to the Python use case, because the Python index is also just like a particular file system structure. But the problem with that is if you have like a remote, Maven registry, is that the right terminology?
Yeah, Maven registry.
Yeah, if you have like
a repository, I think it's repository is the terminology.
Yeah, if you have a Maven repo somewhere, you need to figure out how to get the content there, right? And like you can SSH somewhere, you can FTP content, you can do all kinds of stuff. So that the upload piece doesn't seem to have like a standard. So I think the upload task will probably have to be tied to a particular implementation.
So the upload, I think there's like the general, they do have standards around upload. They have protocols, they call them wagons, I think. But like HTTP is one of them where you can do like basic auth, and that's baked in. You can provide, username, password. That's its own separate, also kind of a concern of the pipeline too, is that if you are providing credentials, it's got to be in the specific format. And you've got to bake in a lot of information into that beyond just the authentication credentials. It's not like container registries where there's like multiple files, where one is just for authentication, another one is for like mirrors and things like that. In Maven, that is all one file.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Nicola has his hand
Yes,
raised.
okay. So somewhat of follow-up to Adam's question. So if you plan to push Maven artifact in build pipeline. So my question is, how do we plan to do all the scans? Because there is ADR and feature, if I remember correctly, to move everything to integration test scenario, and also how conforma checks would be performed. So we probably need to teach conforma to gate on Maven artifacts as well. And there is no mention about it in the ADR at all. Could you please elaborate on this? Thank you.
Yeah, so I can definitely. I think I had a separate document where I started writing a few of those things down. I would love it if we kind of piggyback off of that prior ADR of moving the scanning to be part of the integration test scenario. In which case, packaging the Maven content into an OCR artifact becomes a hard requirement, because then we need to be able to fetch that content in a trusted manner to then do those kind of scans and analysis. There's definitely a big open question as to which scanning tools would actually support just scanning a Maven repository full of jars. I think will vary widely. I think, Mikola, to me, it makes sense that the Maven pipeline, kind of like what we're doing with RPMs, is that it's its own dedicated pipeline. We probably put that in its own dedicated repo, not commingle it with the main build definitions repo. So maybe that also needs to be put in the ADR as like a consequence, that we have a dedicated GitHub repo where the pipelines are going to be defined. And I think similarly, there's probably maybe a question too around builders. One thing that we do have right now is from the UBI catalog. We do have builders for they're the OpenJDK container images, and those include Maven's 3.9, whatever version of Maven 3.9 you support, or Red Hat supports, I should say. And that, of course, can be swapped in with any, in theory, can be swapped with any container image that has a version of OpenJDK and a version of Maven, which, just from a kind of community perspective.
I have a question. Sorry, Ralph, you will be.
I'll go quick about image repository and image controller, and the pulp access request and the pulp controller. Both try to perform the job of provisioning scoped repositories that a tenant namespace can push to. Do you imagine a similar kind of thing being created for the Maven build pipeline to provision convenient Maven repositories that the user can push to that are scoped just to their tenant? Or is it always going to be a bring your own credentials, bring your own Maven repository kind of experience?
I would love to see, and this is something, so I think, I wonder if the pulp access controller, in theory, that approach could support, we could kind of get that quote unquote for free. Pulp does have a Maven plugin. However, that plugin is missing a few critical features for Maven. It's proof of concept where there's no, that the endpoints for Maven don't have authentication, and they also don't support the sort of snapshot repository concept, which is super common in the Maven ecosystem. It's kind of how you get kind of like dev versions. And we do know that like Renovate, for example, can understand any Maven repository, can understand how snapshot repositories, and can even specify kind of like which build versions you have, and or like a snapshot version, you can, when you build with a snapshot version, it generates like a timestamp version, semantic version, you can use that in like a downstream consumer, and Renovate in theory can bump those when builds happen.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll go for it.
I had a question, something different than how you publish the artifacts, but I remember from the Java build service that when we've tried to build a Java package, it like triggered hundreds of pipeline runs to rebuild all the dependencies. Is it going to be the same, the approach that you're suggesting?
No. Rebuilds of dependencies are definitely out of scope. That is something that is definitely a concern, because Maven in current state is artifacts are just published with no attestation. The best that we get from Maven Central is like the immutable versions and PGP signatures, and checksums. That's really about it. So in terms of like rebuilding, I think that's would kind of be similar to the sort of Kalunga effort, where I think we definitely, in my mind, the patterns from Kalunga should probably be applied to any kind of like Maven rebuild process, where it's kind of iterative. It's we can introduce automation around it, because most rebuilds kind of do similar things, but at the same time, when we're doing the build, we don't want to try to push to Maven Central, because that's going to result in a whole bunch of forbidden calls and whatnot.
So what is the approach that will be taken? You said like the Kalunga project. I just don't know what the approach.
So for that, we have effectively a system where it's almost like and Louis, it's probably been a while since you had been working on it, but the proof of concept is that you kind of submit a request for a package to be rebuilt, and it does some initial checks to see if we have some trust in that dependency. I think it was using like OpenSSF scorecard. In the Maven universe, there are projects that do reproducible builds of stuff on Maven Central, and so that's a resource that we can use to sort of encourage some level of trust in the dependency, and then we go rebuild it and then publish our rebuilt version on a kind of dedicated Maven repository. And actually, one of the things that might be worth revisiting with that prior art is what the Maven repository infrastructure looked like with that. If it was maybe using, if it was using a like either Artifactory or Nexus or some other solution for storing Maven objects.
I'm not sure that I understand how is it different. Like you said that you submit the request for the system to do a rebuild of, like how is it different than like I still don't get how is it different than the like Java build service that we've had. If like now you just have another system that needs to take care of the rebuild.
I think, and that's it. Is that it's like another system. Like in the Java build service, you would submit the build of an application, and then as a part of building that application, all the dependencies would get rebuilt. In the Kalunga project, it's like offline or async. Offline is the wrong word. It's a separate system where you submit requests to Kalunga to rebuild a particular package and to always rebuild future versions of that package. So Kalunga is producing a continuous rebuild of the world. Now back over when you're trying to build your application, or let's say some new Maven artifact in Konflux directly, and if it needs dependencies, we will direct that build to pull its dependencies from the pile of Kalunga built dependencies and we won't, when you don't have to rebuild them again, because we treat that source as trusted.
Okay.
This
Yeah,
is, yeah, go ahead, Louis.
yeah, just one more thing. So when you're building the application, you're not actually building any of the dependencies. To build the application successfully, you have to have had all those dependencies being already built in the Columba index, for example.
Yeah, and like off of Java back in Python, this should speed up the hermetic build process for like Python packages dramatically, because currently their hermetic prefetch build process rebuilds all their wheels from scratch, which triples, quadruples, 10x's the time it takes to build some Python applications, which should be cut down significantly once Columba is available.
Thank you.
And yeah, and so in Maven universe, like all the dependencies already are pre-compiled. So it's, I guess, unlike Python where you can rebuild wheels. Java, it's jars or nothing. So it's either you're downloading from Maven Central or you're downloading from a trusted source. Like for a good example is with a lot of like JBoss and those sorts of products from Red Hat. Red Hat has its own kind of Maven repository where they have the rebuilds. Their existing rebuilds of a subset of Maven dependencies. Those have like a special version suffix. You'll see if you see it said like Red Hat -001 or something like that, and you can actually just pull from that directly. There's no authentication behind it. They're kind of like free for everyone, but you have to configure your Maven project to say, I want my dependencies to come from here, here first, because Maven Central is kind of special, and I think it's almost always used. It's very hard to turn Maven Central.
I want to wrap up the conversation. Adam posted the ADR. Let's take discussion to the pull request there. A reminder for everybody about process that if you have a new ADR like Adam's doing here, bring it to the call to kind of open discussion about it. And then we generally want to have a 2-week period of discussion, request for comments on the PR, after which point Konflux Governance Committee will try to make a decision and either extend the period or try to reject or approve the ADR. So we're starting that clock now. However, in 2 weeks, it is the Christmas holiday, and some of the members of KGC will be out and not at their computers. So we're looking at, I think, at least 4 weeks until we get to a decision on this one, early January.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah. Next on the agenda up, Ronnie, are you still on? Are you available? Although I see a hand from Louis. Louis, go ahead.
Sorry, Ralph. I'm just for the process piece that you just explained for the ADR. How do we remember that we talked about this today, and then in 2 weeks from now, which we're probably all going to be eating Christmas ham, how do we know that that's where the clock stopped? Do we put a comment on the pull request? I'm sorry, go ahead.
The KGC creates milestones with the date, like the target date in the architecture repo, which you may not see any right now because I think we don't have any where the clock is ticking. But like, so if you look at the list of milestones in the architecture repo, you'll see where these like future Thursdays are coming up, and this one will be associated with. I think I'll choose January 8th as the name of the milestone for this one. So if you look at the ADR, you'll see the milestone. If you look at the list of milestones, you find the ADR either way to navigate. Does that make sense? Right on. Ronnie, go ahead.
Yes. I was just wondering if Konflux plans to add support for other content types, like Python wheels.
Yeah, it's so relevant to the conversation we just had because Adam's talking about building Maven artifacts. And so I think the answer generally is yes. The specifics of how that's done kind of varies. And like, so for Python wheels, like Louis, can you talk about what Colunga does to produce Python wheels? That is already done in Konflux, right?
I think what maybe Ron is trying to get to is that we can build OCI artifacts because you can provide a custom builder task to do whatever you want. And that's how we are approaching Colunga. However, if you look at the list of required tasks, for example, in the EC policies today, they have things like Claire scan and ClamAV scan and all these other scanners. They don't seem to handle OCI artifacts natively. Some of them will full out crash. Some of them will just say there's nothing to scan. So I think we probably need to do some work, and I don't know what that is, to make those tasks be able to handle OCI artifacts. Like in the Kalunga case, it's a bunch of wheels, and so there's files that have the dot wheel and files that have the dot sdist. The sdist is a source distribution. Both of those formats are just a zip file. So if you crack it open, you can see the files. So there's two problems. The first level is the tasks don't understand that it's an OCI artifact, but we could solve that by maybe introducing like a step, a shared step, or some other mechanism that can expand the OCI artifact into the file system, just like how it does with OCI image extract or container images. We can do like or a spool and get that stuff in there. But then you have these wheels and sdist, and a lot of the scanners don't know how to deal with that. They would just see that and be like, I don't know how to scan this, I'm gonna skip it. So there's probably some, I don't know if that means using a better scanner, or if it, we need to teach those tasks even more complexity on how to, expand, unzip those files, for example. Once we started building those things, we got a lot of conform exceptions and a lot of conform violations, and we added a lot of exceptions, and we're trying to figure out like how to proceed from there.
Bruno, go ahead.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work on the improvements for these scanning tasks. Do you already have a Jira or something like that for this?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear. Do you already have a what?
Jira or anything, any tracker for this, basically. I'd be happy to concentrate on that.
I do not. Ronnie, do you?
We have a Jira for like the Claire team specifically to ask if they can implement the change from their side to work with things other than just images, but nothing for Konflux in terms of yeah.
And I think that's part of why we brought the discussion here too, is to figure out what to do next. So it's good to hear that there's interest in getting that sorted out. Is this a feature request? Is this a bug? How do we do this? Do we do one for each scanner? Do we just create an umbrella thing for all of them?
I would probably start with a feature request. That can be maybe expanded into separate epics for each scanner. We are introducing ACS, who we can also see if it natively supports OCI artifacts. We can definitely check that and maybe have a separate item to also do work with that.
That's great. Thank you, Bruno.
Yep, thanks.
And this would be great. There's other artifact types that are making their way through Konflux. I did some work to make AI models work with like an OCI copy task. That feels like ClamAV could be used there. There are other situations where we're using bootc image builder to produce disk images, and maybe none of the scanners are appropriate for those, but they should at least be able to recognize that they can't operate on those. Right now, I think they would just crash badly if they were presented with a disk image as an OCI artifact. Awesome. And sidebar, Andrew says he's got an internal feature request for this, I think this week, which is great. Ronnie, anything else on this topic?
That's all.
Awesome. Well, we'll follow up async and get it organized.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mario's up next. You got an ADR proposal on mintmaker log serving.
Yes, exactly. So actually, I started this discussion a little while ago in the email threads. So I put up an ADR. I still have to clean up the commits and all. So I'm sorry about that. But before we delve into the topic itself, maybe there's one thing I wasn't aware of the 2 weeks period. And actually, after Christmas, I will be out on PTO for 3 weeks. So I think I'll be missing that, at least 1 week of important discussions. So maybe, so I wanted to ask you guys, maybe I can leave the ADR open for 1 week, then we close, then we get back to it once I get back from my PTO. Is that okay?
Find the mute button. That's totally okay. The process only exists to make sure that we don't let things fall through the cracks and forget about them accidentally, which we were totally doing in the first part of last year and before that. So we're trying to find a way to just keep ourselves accountable to keep things moving. I can set the date for end of January if you'd like.
Perfect.
That way we just have plenty of time for you to come back and ease into the new year.
That would be perfect. Thank you, Ralph. Okay. Let me go briefly about the proposal itself. So what we're trying to do next, one of the next priorities for mintmaker is to integrate it with Konflux UI. That will be really important to enhance the user experience, because we have lots of cases of user support where we see users are really not having a good visibility of what mintmaker is doing, how the runs are going, so that kind of thing. Providing this basic info for the users will be really valuable. So one of the information that we want to provide to the users is how the pipeline runs from mintmaker went. Were they successful? Were there token problems, or that kind of thing? Really basic. So we are looking to provide the logs from the pipeline runs to those users. Now, there were a few different manners about how to go about this. And I don't know, do you guys want me to go over each one of them, or because there's somewhat of a ongoing discussion in the ADR itself. Maybe it's a bit more structured there. So I don't know how you guys want to go about this.
It's whatever you want to do. You can just announce that you have the ADR out and ask for people to comment async, or if you want to talk through them now, it's your call.
Right. I think I would prefer to go on it async, because otherwise I think it's I kind of have a little bit of trouble to keep everything in my mind. So yeah, if we can go over the PR, that would be better for me.
That sounds good. Right. So then it just functions as an announcement to everybody. Comment for periods is open, or the period for comments is open on the ADR. We'll follow up there. I see Adam's hand.
Yeah, just FYI, our current idea, if everything goes how we think it should go, the idea is to enable read access to pipeline runs in mintmaker namespace, and then investigate how to run the pipeline runs in the user namespace in a way that we can still support it. The amount of problems that our users can get themselves into is decreased, but we don't have to have this basically, so users can get this dependency management black box experience, but it actually runs in their namespace. That would be ideal case, because users have hard time keeping configuring renovate.json, and the amount of problems they can get themselves into can considerably increase if we do it mindlessly.
That makes sense. Yeah. I guess I just want to say thanks, guys, for being open to the feedback on the mailing list. I really appreciate it, and we'll take the discussion to the ADR and see where we go from there.
Yeah, based on that feedback, we stopped considering options of proxy and option of some other solution,
it's
transferring
custom resource shuttling.
Yeah, the two initial proposals. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are out of the table.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, when do you think that the actual redesign of running the pipelines in the mintmaker in the user's namespace will happen? Because if we want to decide that we want to do it and set a date, it would never happen. This is what I'm feeling right now. It's not a new thing that we believe that the pipelines should run in the user's namespace. When mintmaker was developed for the first time, different people said it, including me, and at least a year passed since that. So how do we show? Yeah.
If I could, like I think my default opinion also is that Gala, they should run in the user namespace. But what I'm hearing from Adam, and I think from Mario too, is that there's problems that can arise if they move them there, and they at least need to take account of those problems and figure out how they could be minimized or solved. So maybe it's a matter of if we can document what those are in the ADR, that would get us closer to figuring out how feasible it would be to move them to the user's namespace.
So when we talk about like timelines, we are actually already looking into it, like what kind of problems this would encounter. So that's something that I plan to, unless there is some, like, you know, like I'm not fortune teller, but unless like it goes according to my plan, we should tackle this in 2026, preferably in the first half of 2026, at least starting to work on it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Like one of the things that we want to tackle in 2026, because in general, mintmaker is also like how to figure out the way how to use resources in better way, so we are not destroying clusters every time mintmaker like cycle starts. And we believe this should be like, it's multiple things, but they will be tackled together because they are interconnected.
I think that when running, like, it ties to running the mintmaker pipelines in the user's namespace, because then it will take their quota. Then they would configure it in the way that suits their needs, and they would want to configure the periods, like the amount of times that it runs a day, to a number that won't interfere with their build workloads.
Well, I believe that's more like a philosophical question, because I believe the users want dependency management and they don't want to configure it, they want it to work. Like we are adding additional responsibilities to the users, which I don't think we should. And like this whole, even now users sometimes have a hard time like grasping, like I clicked on something in dependency management and it took a long time for it to actually do anything. And this is one of the like challenges that we need to solve before we like give the power to the user mindlessly, because I don't want then, and it's happening already right now, users creating tickets like, why I haven't received some sort of update for 2 days, and these kind of like questions.
Yeah, right, because they don't know what is the schedule, like, and they don't see the pipeline.
Like
if they would know the schedule, they would know.
But we are now introducing completely new problem of like, you can schedule renovate internally, then you can schedule it renovate like actual runs, then there are some sort of triggers. Like I believe it boils down to what kind of experience when it comes to dependency management we want to provide to the users. And I believe users do not want to be bothered by like configuring the system needlessly. They want it to basically work. And then it's up to us to figure out how to make that work without their like them like having to become like how do you call it, experts in like things renovate.
The last thing that I would say is that, like, I think that most of the users have a renovate config in their repository in order to get like the experience that they need, at least from the Konflux project that I've seen. So you need to be, most of the times you need to be a renovate expert because you have the config in your repository. It's like the same thing I can say about Tecton, right? Like we push the Tecton pipelines to the user's repository. So we admit that they need to know Tecton. We are not hiding the fact that the use Tecton.
Well,
same for renovate.
Right now they are using quite extensively what we provide them as a default configuration, and when they try to go outside of this area, they contact us quite a lot. Basically, support with configuration is like something that like takes considerable amount of resources, and once again, like I believe that it's a philosophical conversation about, okay, Konflux has a dependency management system. What does this mean? Like, is this some system that user says like how the configuration should, how dependency should be managed, and all of these other details we will solve for them, or we will give them like complete control over it, then like you can start the question like why bother with this at all? Like if you like user can run the Tecton pipeline with Renovate without having a mintmaker team. Anyways, Louis.
Yeah, and apologies, I have not been following the discussion in thread, and I have not read the ADR. So if my question is silly, just tell me to go away. So Renovate, when you use it, the service in GitHub, you can enable a dashboard that gives you like interesting things like which packages Renovate identified, the last run, and it also allows you to request it to run again right now. There's like all this kind of like little knobs. Is that something that has been considered for Konflux?
Yeah. So I have to go downstairs, but Mario can answer like, yes, users can turn it on, but I know there are reasons like a lot of users don't want to have it turned on by default. And for example, this like clicking and something will get like, and you can start the build. Actually, how it works in normal Renovate is that every hour Renovate runs, and if you notice is that you click on something that it like does some sort of action.
Okay.
But like you can turn this functionality on. We even mentioned that in the documentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to complement what Adam said, and of course we have like a small set of the first few features that we want to have available through Konflux UI in the first moment, and they're mostly things to let the users know how things are going, like when the next run is scheduled. How get them a list of pipeline runs and what the final status of each one was. Like, did it run successfully? Was there a failure? Is it running still? So really these kinds of more basic things. All these knobs and things to control, they're really interesting, but they're probably gonna. We thought that if we didn't have these things in the first place, maybe it would be a little bit hard to like the users know what's going on and then how to control them. So yeah. So what I'm trying to say is in this first moment, the features we have planned are more like informational, so to say, like display information and let the users know how things are going. But I love this idea that you brought up, Louis. Definitely, this is something to look as we enhance the things we're showing the UI.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I guess I just want to say, Mario, thanks for raising it. Will everybody go look at the ADR? We'll put comments on it, and when you're back from PTO, we can carry on the conversation.
Perfect. And I also want to thank you all for the great collaboration. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Looking at the agenda, our last point is I just want to ask about this meeting for the next couple weeks. 2 weeks from now is the Christmas holiday. Not everybody is taking off or observing that holiday, but some are. And so do we want to hold the meeting that Thursday, even though we'll have reduced attendance? And the same question goes for the Thursday prior. It's not yet a holiday, but I think some people will be taking off on vacation at that point. Does anybody have an opinion? I guess we could do a quick like emoji poll. If you want to hold the meeting next week, I'm not talking about the Christmas Day holiday, but on that 18th, can you put an emoji in, thumbs up in the call? Nico says yes. Adam says yes. Mario says yes. Okay, with 3, that's enough. So we'll hold the meeting that day. And how about on the 25th itself? We'll cancel the meeting that day, but we will have the meeting next week, and then we'll go from there and figure out the days in between then and New Year's later on. So, all right, thank you for the feedback. And the recording. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Good discussion today.